fencing is often called the physical chess, because there's a lot of like mind involved in, planning, attack, second intention, all kinds of things. And there is something in fencing called second intention, where actually your first attack is not meant to land. It's actually meant to invite a response by your opponent. I think that with fencing, the one thing that you learn is that you cannot dwell on your mistakes, right? So coaches always say that, they're like reset. What happens is that you play a point, you score a hit. There will be maybe a 5 second or 6 second time frame when after the hit, and then the next point will start. So you have about like 5 or 6 seconds to both reset mentally, but also to ask yourself what happened in that point.
My guest today is Gautam Bhatia, someone many of you might recognize as a distinguished constitutional lawyer, a widely read author both in fiction and non-fiction, columnist, and a sharp voice on free speech and civil liberties in India. His books like the Transformative Constitution and Offend, Shock or Disturb have shaped how a lot of us think about rights, the Constitution, and the space for dissent. But I have always found that the most interesting parts of people often sit outside what they are best known for. In Gautam's case, that's fencing, a sport that's as much about instinct and elegance as it is about discipline, and one that has been part of every modern Olympics since the 1896 Summer Olympics, quietly carrying forward a tradition that began in duels and now lives on as strategy. So in this episode, we are not diving into legal frameworks or courtrooms. Instead, we are talking about what it means to pursue something purely for the love of it, how passions outside of work shape who we become, and how a lawyer ends up finding meaning on a fencing strip or in a new city far from home. This one's about the person behind the reputation. You are with me, Shruti Jahagirdar, and this is the Curious Human Project, a podcast about sport, health, habits, and the hustle to stay human. Gautam, welcome to the Curious Human Project. Who would have thought that we'd be discussing sport on a podcast someday?
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, and I'm really glad to finally get to talk about fencing in India because it is expanding in India a lot, but I think it is still a mystery sport. I think for many people in India.
Yeah, even somebody like me who follows sport a lot, who actually works in the sports industry, had to really read up, and you are actually the one who introduced me to fencing. So not a lot of people know, but we got to know each other when we were studying in Berlin, and you were as well working and researching there. And on one of our runs, actually you mentioned that you were going off to Budapest for a training camp, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And it was for the sport that I had never heard about, which was fencing.
Yeah.
And that got me really, that intrigued me so much. And I was half proud of you for picking something that nobody ever mentions or thinks about. And we're going to talk all about that.
Yeah.
Before we begin, a little question that actually stems from what you do, and which is that, look, you spend a lot of time thinking about rights, structure, and limits within the Constitution. But do you ever feel that that way of thinking spills over into how you approach life? Because I have noticed that so many things that I do, let's say I'm an engineer, and I have come to believe now, being in the field for 15, 20 years, that it's a way of thinking. It's a way of creating patterns, analyzing information. So it's a lot more than our degrees and what we do, and that's why this question.
I mean, I think that's a really good question, and I think my work with law actually, I think, has worked in the opposite direction, in the sense that it's made me understand that the language of law and the grammar of law is very limiting and very constraining, and life actually goes much beyond and lies much outside what law can define. And in fact, it's the creative side, the writing side of me that I think I lean into a lot more when I'm living my life. I think my work in law actually has had the impact of showing me that there is so much to life that cannot be captured, through rules, through even the language of rights. Like it's a certain way of looking at the world, but the world is much more expansive.
Yeah.
And it goes much beyond this specific grammar.
Yeah, and my brother's a lawyer as well, and I see him complain in a sense sometimes about law because he constantly tells me that our work as litigators actually lies in the gray areas
Yeah,
because the law is incapable of covering every edge case, every situation, and every human condition, and
yeah.
and that's really what we lawyers have to learn to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, we have work when something somewhere fails, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if nothing fails, then nobody needs to come to court. So our task actually begins when there is a failure of something somewhere. I think again that just tells you something about what the domain of law is meant to be, but also what it's not meant to be actually.
Absolutely. And we did I mean, I spoke in my introduction that you're both a fiction writer and a non-fiction writer. And of course, look, your non-fiction is deeply analytical. It draws from your research, from your work. But your fiction, especially sci-fi, explores very different worlds. And you just touched upon, why you could be exploring these worlds. But if you
Yeah.
could go a little bit into it, like what does writing fiction allow you to do that legal writing doesn't?
I mean, I think the beauty of science fiction, and I think many people have a very limited view of what science fiction is, because I meet people and and they say, oh, I don't read science fiction, and I tell them examples of famous science fiction stories that I don't call them science fiction, and they're very interested. So science fiction at its best is about changing one or two things about the world as we know it, creating an alternative world where everything looks familiar, but there are one or two things that are different, and then to use that difference to reflect back on our world and our condition, and in that way, the process of world building in science fiction really lets you shine a light on many of the structures in our world. It lets you show how much of what we think is permanent or just embedded actually is very contingent, and what a world might look like in which things were different. So I think that writing science fiction lets you explore that in very creative ways, which I think for me is where the beauty of the genre lies, both in reading it, which I think really fires up your imagination, but also in writing it because you have that freedom to create a new world of your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you could give us an example of what you
Yeah,
mean by science fiction, or what is that condition that you find fascinating to change, if at all?
yeah. So I mean, let me give you an example of one of my favorite short stories in science fiction. It's called Nightfall by a writer that everybody would have heard of, Isaac Asimov. And the plot of Nightfall is that there is one planet which has six suns. It orbits, six suns, and not just one sun. And so, at any given time, there is at least one sun that's there in a particular hemisphere. So there is no nightfall. Right? So night never comes, except once in 2,000 years when all the six suns are on the other side, of the planet. And so there is one generation in 200 years that experiences nightfall, 2,000 years, which experiences nightfall and stars. So basically, nobody remembers what stars are. Right? And so, what Asimov imagines is that what will happen when you are a person who has heard rumors and legends from centuries ago about there is this thing called nightfall, but you have no experience of it, and then suddenly night comes and stars come, and just how would society react to something so strange and so alien? And the thing is that for us, nightfall is the most common thing in the world, right? Like every
Yeah.
day, every night. So it really helps us to think of what would happen if some of the things that are really fixtures of our world were not to be so. And again, just how would humanity and society react to something that is out of syllabus, right? No, in that
Yeah.
sense. And often it's with violence, it's with incomprehension. But he really deals with that in a very nuanced way. And so I think that's an example of what you can do with science fiction. You take something so basic, something such a natural part of our world like nightfall, and just say, what if there was a world in which there was no nightfall? What would
Yeah.
that world look like? And then
Yeah.
you use that to reflect back on the way we react to strangeness in our, the other, like people who are not like us, all of that, right? So it
Yeah.
opens up a canvas.
Yeah, so interesting. And when you were telling me this story, I remembered something that has nothing to do with science, but how expanding your imagination could
Yeah,
have an impact on your everyday life. I was briefly consulting a therapist um, a couple of years ago,
yeah,
and she must have gone through her own evolution at some point of time,
yeah.
and she ended up completely changing her name everywhere
Right,
at some point, right? This
right,
is a lady closer to her 50s, okay, and a South Indian taking up a North Indian name,
right,
okay,
right.
and she was very serious about it. She changed it, and then, of course, she would have told everybody she knows and everybody who's consulting her that now please call me by my new name.
Yeah.
And at some point, she was sharing the experience with us, and she said some people just refused. They said that we cannot call you by your new name, we cannot imagine that, and we find it very hard. Whereas there were some people who were like, okay, like, I,
It's like pronouns for trans people, right? Like sometimes people just refuse to acknowledge, that, and they keep calling them by their dead names. I think it's something very similar going on over here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Gautam, I was saying I want to stay with this thought for a few minutes, which is what you were mentioning, that there is a common thread between constitutional law and science fiction for you.
Yeah,
And you were giving us examples of imagining alternate realities,
yeah,
alternate systems. Um, and that just means maybe imagining different ways in which societies could be structured.
yeah.
And so the time you spend on science fiction, do you see that come in some or the other way in your work, or is it the other way around?
And there is a relationship, but it's sort of it's you are exploring similar ideas, both in law and in science fiction. And for example, my last novel, The Sentence, it's
Hmm.
about the death penalty, right? And capital punishment is a central theme of that novel. And of course, as a lawyer, you work well. I'm not a death penalty lawyer, but you come into contact with capital cases, and it's something you're thinking about. So yeah, I mean, these like law and science fiction just give you alternative lenses or perspectives to examine, human problems, human issues, what it means to be human. I think where there's sometimes a danger is that you try to like write legal science fiction, right? You try and like basically use science fiction as a vehicle to yeah, like make a legal point. Now that will make for bad writing because you have to take both the law and fiction on its own terms. You can't transpose them. They're very different writing styles. Fiction and non-fiction demand very different approaches, very different ways of imagining what you're doing. So in that way, they're two different things. But ultimately, writing, whether fiction or non-fiction, is a platform to explore these kinds of facets of our place in the world and human beings and so on.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. And I now want to go into what many people don't know about you,
Yeah,
which is that you're an avid fencer.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Definitely not a fence sitter, but a fencer.
Yeah,
And like I mentioned, you introduced me to the sport. It's one of the oldest sport. It's been in the Summer Olympics since 1896. It's 150 years old in its modern form. And I want to also give a little bit of background of what I understood when I read about the sport a little bit, which is that I come from having had a tryst with martial arts, in Tiger Muay Thai, something I chanced upon. And when I
yeah,
started, finding out more about fencing, the first instinct is, hey, this is a combat sport.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I came from that lens. And
yeah,
then very quickly, what I understood is there is a fundamental difference.
yeah,
And that difference is that martial arts or Muay Thai, for example, come from the battlefield field.
yeah,
But a sport like fencing actually comes from duels, right?
yeah,
Duels that were played for honor.
yeah, yeah,
And so there is a fundamental difference between the
yeah,
two sports, and hence the perhaps the way you think about it when you're
yeah.
playing. And also it's evolved now
Yeah.
later on from
Yeah.
getting rid of the swords to how nobility perhaps enjoyed sport
Yes.
later on,
Yeah.
right? And so how the first and the primary question is, how did you, somebody sitting in India, somebody sitting in Delhi, chance upon this sport?
Yeah, I mean, I think before I answer that, I'll just complicate what you said a little bit about fencing's origins and its relationship with combat sports. So,
Yeah.
I like to call fencing, and this might annoy some people. I think it's like a non-contact contact sport, right? So, in the sense that it is a contact sport, very much so, but it is virtually impossible to get. Well, it's possible. It can happen. It has happened. It is very difficult to get injured by your opponent,
Hmm.
in fencing. Most of the injuries you pick up are like muscle strains,
Hmm.
by stretching too much or not having warmed up properly, things like that. Unless you get very unlucky or something goes badly wrong. And yes, you can get bruised. I mean, you get bruised around the collarbone a fair bit in fencing, but you can't really get hurt by your opponent in fencing. So in that sense, it's not like, other contact or combat sports. As far as its origins go, yes. So well, yes and no, because um, yeah, there were duels, but some of those duels were very serious, right? So and
Hmm.
people did die in them,
Yeah.
and at one point, and so in fact, the historical reason why fencers wear whites
Hmm.
is because at one point the duels were to first blood, right? So not to death, but to first blood. And
Oh,
obviously, you can see that blood much more clearly on a white cloth, right?
okay.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's why it's all white. It's an old historical thing of all whites.
Yeah.
But also I would say, and we can talk about this a little more. There is an overlap, a little bit of an overlap between fencing techniques and actual sword fighting.
Hmm.
And of course, nobody does sword fighting isn't a thing anymore in actual war, right? So that's
Yeah.
gone out of fashion for
Yeah.
obvious reasons. But there are some overlaps, and in fact, one of the three forms of fencing, which is foil,
Yeah.
in some ways is meant to replicate how you'd behave in an actual sword fight. And
Hmm.
again, we can talk about this when we talk about the complexities of fencing. But for example, in foil, if you're being attacked and you just like stick out your sword and attack back, you lose the point. Because
Hmm.
if it was a real sword coming at you, and you were just to like hit back, you'd both die, right? So if it was a real sword coming at you, your first first instinct would be to parry it or like move back or
Yeah.
make the attack fall short. And so in foil, for example, if you're attacking, then you have priority. Only you can score a point on the
Yeah.
attack, subject to a few exceptions.
Hmm.
But so yeah, so for example, foil is meant to actually simulate how your mind would work in an actual sport fight. So I'd say that yeah, like of course, like fencing is not quite like combat sport. It's not martial arts, but I would say nor is it purely like derived from a duel for honor. There's something more going on there. It's a more complex history, right? So I just like nuance that a little bit. Now, yeah, as far as your question goes, how did I get into it? Yeah, so I mean, I grew up, and this is my other life. I grew up reading fantasy and science fiction,
Hmm.
and Star Wars, lightsaber duels. Any good epic fantasy has sword fights,
Yeah.
and so I was like, me and my friend would like take these cardboard like things and do like sword fighting in college, things like that. People would be like, what are you guys doing, and they'd watch us from like the first floor and be like, what are these guys doing? But we were like, yeah, this is our dream. And so I always wanted to yeah, experience the closest thing to sport fighting, which in my head was the sport of fencing.
Hmm.
And so after my undergrad, I basically went to Oxford for my master's,
Hmm.
which is your classic English university. And I went to open day when all the Oxford University sports clubs had their presentations.
Hmm.
And right there was fencing, and it was cheap. They said, we'll give you equipment, we will train you, all of that. Just come join us. It's a very friendly social club. And this is my big chance to put my Star Wars, Lord of the Rings dreams into action.
Yeah.
And so I went for the taster. Now, I very quickly learned that obviously, the sport of fencing is nothing like lightsaber dueling and Lord of the Rings fighting. It's something very different. But what it was really drew me in. It was just brilliant. like the it's called, fencing is often called the physical chess, because
Correct.
there's a lot of like mind involved in
Correct.
planning attack, second intention, all kinds of things, and we can
Correct.
discuss that. I was fascinated, so I just joined up, and I took, so they had a 1 year beginners course
Hmm.
where so in fencing actually footwork is the most important thing. It's more
Hmm.
important than blade work in some
Hmm.
fencing like traditions. So there was footwork to start with, where you actually didn't get to hold a proper fencing blade until like your sixth or seventh week. And electric fencing comes much later. And so there was a 1 year long what they call novices course. I took that in the end. I went for, so there's Oxford, Cambridge. There was a novices competition where only people who were doing it for 1 year could participate. So I went. I was part of the Oxford team for that, and that's how I got into it. And then I after Oxford, I went to Yale for 1 year, and there it was even more strict because in Yale there was no, in fact, like you couldn't even touch the weapon. So it was
Hmm.
the entire semester was just for footwork, nothing else.
Wow.
And then I came back to India. It was a little hard at that time to find a fencing place. I was in trial court. I had no time,
Hmm.
so I stopped for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And then I went back to Oxford for my PhD. And then I took it up like very seriously. So
And when was this? Which year?
2018, I was back in Oxford, and then I took it up properly, seriously. I would train 3 or 4 times a week, and just before COVID hit, I was part of the Oxford second team for epee. So we went all over the country, basically fencing other universities in the league. So I did a lot of competitive fencing. I did open tournaments in the UK. It was fun. Yeah, so that's how I got into it, basically.
That's fascinating. And it's so interesting to know that it came from something you were reading and from a childhood
Yeah,
bucket list.
yeah.
Because I, for certain, know that there were many people who wanted to play Quidditch after reading Harry Potter. But at least you had a fantasy that came closer to what reality could offer.
Well, like there was actually like a Quidditch team in Oxford as well. Quidditch was
Wow.
an actual thing in Oxford, but yeah, yeah. I mean, I have some views about this book and its author, but like we won't go there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Hey, I want to double click on a couple of things.
yeah,
First, like you mentioned, fencing is actually called the physical chess.
yeah,
And that's another thing that, look, I was trying to understand it from my point of view, from the experiences that I've had, and I have had ones with martial arts.
yeah,
And I've mentioned this in my podcast before as well, that I think that martial arts are almost like the king of sport in terms
yeah,
of they make you critically aware of the limitations of your body.
yeah,
And in a way where you are inhabiting this body, but you do not know what it is capable of and what it is incapable of.
yeah,
And when somebody pins you down, or when, let's say you are being choked, or there is an arm bar or whatever, you realize that a flick of a finger, or just moving your elbow in a certain way can completely lock you out, something that you've
yeah,
never experienced, etc. And
yeah.
which is why I sometimes say that martial arts is the most spiritually humbling, in a sense elevating experience. And when I was reading about fencing, I had the opposite view. I said, this is going to be an intellectually elevating experience.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah,
because here the sport kind of tells you, invites you to think, not brute strength.
yeah, yeah. I
This is very
mean,
different.
yeah. So I mean, just to give you an example, there is something in fencing called second intention, which is basically it's a lot. It happens a lot in epee, which is the weapon I do, where actually your first attack is not meant to land. It's
Mm.
actually meant to invite a response by your opponent.
Yeah.
And if the opponent responds in the way that you invite them to, then your second attack, so second intention, is the one that lands. Now,
Hmm.
if your opponent has seen you fence before, they will know that you are inviting them to respond. So they will not respond in that way. And this can go on from multiple levels, right?
Yeah.
Chess. So, I mean, again, like chess is like, I wouldn't say it's like equivalent. Obviously, like, chess has like possibilities that are like millions, the order of millions. Not that, but you are thinking ahead multiple moves in fencing. And often, in fact, and so, for example, you will see this. You will see in epee that the round will begin. It's 3 minutes, and almost for 45 seconds there'll be no point scored
Yeah.
because both the fences are just like testing each other's responses.
Yeah.
So if I, for example, faint to his or her arm, what is the reaction? So I learn that from fainting, and then I plan my attack based on, oh, this is the way that he or she reacts if I do this. So I shouldn't do this. So yeah, so it's a lot. There's a lot of thinking going on in fencing.
Yeah, yeah. And so before we talk more about that, let's take a step back and help our readers
Yeah,
get the lay of the land.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
You've already mentioned foil, you've mentioned epee, and
yeah,
there's the third one, which is the saber.
yeah,
Am I saying
yeah,
it correctly?
yeah. That's
Uh,
saber. Yeah.
so if you could tell us, so these are, as I understand, the three forms of fencing:
Yeah.
foil,
Three,
epee, and
three
saber.
weapons. Three weapons in three forms. Yeah,
Three
yeah,
different weapons, and also the attack is on different parts of the body.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and
yeah.
so, if you could take us through a little bit of the lay of the land, like,
Yeah.
fencing for beginners.
Yeah, so this is a little complicated. I'll try and simplify it and make it interesting as well. So three forms: foil, epee, saber. Foil is meant to be simulating a real sword fight. That's part of its rule set is meant to simulate a real sword fight. And foil is tactical. Foil is very tactical, strategic. Epee is precision because and I'll explain how. And saber is speed. So that's basically an aggression. That's what
Hmm.
characterizes these three forms. In foil, and in many countries, and this is true for England as well, where I learned fencing. In foil, you often begin with foil before you go into other weapons. In foil, the target area, which is where you can score points, is basically the torso
Yeah.
and the lower part of the neck, so
Hmm.
up till here.
Hmm.
This is where you can score points. Any other place you don't score points.
Yeah.
In epee, it's the whole body. So anywhere you hit, you score points. In saber, it's the torso and the arms and the head. So the mask.
Hmm.
So you can score points there. So
Hmm.
that's where the target area.
Yeah.
The rules are that in both foil and saber, there is something called priority,
Hmm.
which basically means that if I am attacking, then on my attack, only I can score a
Hmm.
point. So if I hit on my attack, I score a point, the target area. If while I am still attacking, the other person hits me on the target area, they don't score a point,
Hmm.
right? Now, what does an attack mean? That's the next question. An attack happens if I am advancing along the
Yeah.
strip, which we call it a piece in fencing. So if I am advancing, I am attacking. If my arm is extended, to hit, I am attacking. That's broadly how it works, and there are of course all kinds of complexities here.
Yeah.
But basically, that's an attack,
Hmm.
and my attack broadly can end in one of two ways.
Hmm.
One way is that if I'm parried, so I'm attacking, the other person basically parries my blade, locks
Yeah.
it, deflects it in
Yeah.
and there are 8 different parries, and we can talk about that, or even more parries if depending on which school you're from. So either my attack is parried or my attack falls short. So
Hmm.
I attack, I lunge, I try to hit, and I miss. So and then the priority shifts. So
Hmm.
then the other person can score a point and they attack.
Hmm.
And priority basically goes back and forth in foil and saber. So you attack, you get parry, other person, then other person has the priority, they try to attack, then you do. So yeah, like it goes back and forth. And of course, a lot then comes to the referees. So
Hmm.
the referee will be the one who will decide whose attack it was. In saber, which is very fast, it is basically the whistle, or not whistle. I mean, no, it's basically in fencing. It's like there are three things the referee says: on guard, in French, on guard, prêt, aller, or in English, on guard, ready, fence. The
Yeah.
moment the referee says fence, in saber, you'll see the two of them diving into each other, so fast. And then the referee has to call who was on the attack.
Yeah.
It may sound technical, but like I said, the logic of this
Yeah.
is that in a real sword fight, if you're attacking me and I just attack you back, we both die. There's no point
Yeah.
there. So if you're attacking me, I will first try to foil your attack,
Yeah.
or stop your attack, and then attack you, right? So it's
Correct.
meant to simulate, that. So basically, in foil and saber, you can only score points on priority, and therefore only one person can score a point, the person whose priority it is. Epee is much simpler. All of this, nothing of this kind. You hit, you score a point. Wherever you hit, you score a point, and basically the whole body. And it is therefore possible if both of the players simultaneously hit, they both score points, which of course makes Epee a very different tactical game, right? So you can both score points. If you're in the lead, for example, you just try and score doubles, and just keep the lead. So yeah. So to sum up, foil and saber have priority, and foil and saber have limited target area. So foil torso, saber, upper body,
Yeah.
and they are meant to simulate a real fight, a real sword fight. Epee is the full target area, and there's no priority. It's meant to simulate like a more physical, form of combat or game. And finally, the other thing is the foil and the epee are thrusting weapons. So there's a tip, and when the tip basically bends, right? When you hit and your the blade bends and the tip is pressed,
Yeah.
that's when a point is scored. Saber is a slashing weapon, so like yeah, you see it goes like this. So in saber you slash, and in epee and foil you thrust, and like when the tip bends, that's when the point is scored. That's like a very quick whistle stop tour of the three weapons and the forms and the rules. It is of course a lot more complex, and there are all kinds of things, like if you hold the arm up like this sometimes, even if it's called point in line, then even if it's not your yeah, we don't have to go into that, but yeah, broadly this is the other rules.
Yeah, and so different from anything we know about, right? There's
Yeah,
one thing that you should also sort of tell us before you sum everything up, is the size of the pist. If I'm not wrong, that is the landmass where the action is going on.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And what fascinated me about fencing is this is the perhaps the only sport that is that unfolds over a very small strip, not
yeah,
a
yeah,
ring, not like ground or anything like that, but
yeah,
a small strip. And
yeah.
all you're doing is essentially either moving forward or backward,
Yeah.
more often than not.
Yeah, so there is a rectangular strip you fence on. I mean, I have the exact dimensions I can't recall right now, but it's yeah, it's not like yeah, it's long but not too long, and there's like a half line. So and then there is the on guard line. So
Yeah.
both fences begin on their own on guard line, and then a little way back is a warning line, which is that you're about to run out of the piece, and then there is the back line. If both your feet go beyond the back line, then you lose the point.
Right.
So you're basically fencing along a rectangular strip, and that's how yeah. And you'll see like the good fencers, you'll see them move across the whole piece back and forth quite a bit.
Right. In your opinion, the best fencers come from, is it mostly Italy, France, and Hungary, or there are
Yeah,
other
it depends.
Russia
So
maybe?
yeah, so epee is the weapon I watch, obviously, since I do it. And presently, Japan, is
Oh
is
wow.
is is very very good. There's a guy called Kano.
Hmm.
Like he's very short, but like he's so quick. Like so there's this Kano, and then Hungary. Hungary is like there's a whole Hungarian school of fencing.
Yeah.
So they are very good. And in fact, I think that the last Olympic final or the last World Cup final, I think it was the Olympic final, was Hungary and Japan. So
Hmm.
so Hungary is a guy called Siklosi. He's like big and strong, and like he's very fast. So there's a Hungarian school of fencing, and then Italy and France are always like doing well. Recently, China has become good. Egypt has good women fencers. Like Egypt is
Wow.
also good. There is actually like a Kenyan woman fencer.
Wow.
She's very good. So yeah, like it depends. There's a Brazilian woman fencer. She's very good. So yeah, I think, but the traditional powerhouses right now are Hungary and Japan, and yeah, France, Italy are there always like doing well. Recently you have yeah, Egypt has some good fencers. China's coming up very strongly. Sometimes South Korea as well. So yeah, these are all like good fencing countries. And in India, like we have Bhavani Devi, who's a saber. saber fencer. She's a top Indian fencer,
Wow.
and she, I think, narrowly missed out on the Olympics, and hopefully she'll make it. She's a saber fencer, so hopefully she'll make it this time. And in epee we have some as well who are aiming for the Olympics, and most of the top Indian fencers train in France.
I see.
So yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know that India had fencers actively trying to enter
Oh,
Olympics.
in India won the Commonwealth gold medal last time in fencing. Yeah, we beat Scotland. Yeah, yeah,
I see.
yeah,
So give me the lay of the land for India, and
yeah,
also if you could throw a little bit of a light on, like you mentioned, right, when you were training in Oxford and then later in Yale,
yeah,
there were clear rules about when you could touch the weapon.
yeah, yeah.
When are you
But
ready?
it's more like a coaching philosophy.
Yeah,
So yeah,
when you're
yeah,
ready
yeah,
is the next step.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
wanted to ask you a little bit about what that tells you about the training techniques in sport
yeah,
in general, if you were to think
yeah,
about it, extend it a little bit. And then
yeah,
if you could also give us the lay of the land in India. Like if today
yeah,
somebody listens to this and says that,
yeah,
hey, I want to test how I
yeah,
feel, and
yeah,
I want to
yeah,
practice the sport, what do they
yeah.
do?
I mean, so in India, I think most big cities now have like fencing clubs. I think schools also offer it. Some schools offer it. Now I go fencing at this place called Dynamo Fencing Club, which is in Dwarka.
Hmm.
I mean, I recently used to go.
In
Now I
Delhi.
do more personal coaching. I mean, from what I know, like Bombay has a few places, Bangalore has a few places. So yeah, I mean, I think most big cities now have fencing clubs, and the one of the main places for Indian fencing is Patiala. That's where often the national team trains. Then I think near Pune there's like another very strong fencing center. But these are if you want to go pro. These are like if you have dreams of basically becoming a pro fencer. And yeah, Haryana, like there's a lot of fencing going on there in Jind and these places. It's very big over here. So yeah, I mean, and you have, I think, unfortunately, like I think the problem is that so in the UK, which is where I fenced most of my active fencing life, and a bit in Australia, but in the UK, like every month there'll be an open competition, and you go and you fence. And also, by the way, one I think very good thing about fencing is that training is always mixed gender. Like it's you fence mixed gender, and in fact, in some of the tournaments, the preliminary stage, what we call pools, which is the round robin, is also mixed gender. So it's like a very egalitarian sport in that way. And you always men and women always train together. So
That's
there's that,
right.
and sort of yeah, the genders become sort of like separate in the elimination rounds. So I've always trained alongside, like men, women, like it's really very good in that way. It's very sort of camaraderie. It's very nice. And yeah, so I think those are main. Yeah, the problem in India is that we don't have open competitions.
Yeah.
So you do have like school level, you have some stuff, but for like if you're an adult, then there'll be like 2 or 3 a year.
Yeah.
Open competitions. It's really hard. So I think that is something we need to like work on. Because I think you only create like like the great fencers come and you have like a pool of lot of fencers, right? Like
Yeah.
standard theory, and that can only happen if you have frequent competition, so that fencers can really get into like the competing mode.
Yeah.
Which again in the UK, like every month, some city will have an open competition. Like
Yeah.
so you keep fencing all the time. So I think we have to improve on that, and of course, other things, sponsorship, all of that is very much like a problem. But yeah, so and I think that links up to my point about coaching techniques. So in fencing, I mean, yeah, like I think like with most sport, like there is the glamour part of it, and then there is the sweat and the the hard work, right?
Yeah.
In fencing, obviously the glamour part is the sword fighting, right? Like the like the actual blade work. But the real thing in fencing is footwork,
Yeah.
because it's all about maintaining the distance between you and your opponent. So if you're good with distance, you will ensure that their attacks will fall short, or that their attacks will come when you step in and then get the point, and
Yeah.
your own attacks will then be much more measured. Basically, you control the pace and the rhythm of the bout.
Yeah.
And so distance is the most important thing in fencing. And so you always begin with correct footwork. So your first class is footwork, just how you move. There's a very specific way of moving in fencing. Like it's like your back foot is like straight and your front foot is 90 degrees angle to your back foot, and
Okay.
you're slightly bent. So you see if you watch a fencing bout, they begin a little bit bent, and like back foot, front foot, and then you move backward and forward. And basically, any training session in fencing begins with like a round of footwork.
Hmm.
So you go for like a training session. The first half an hour will be footwork. So you'll go forward, backward. The coach will then basically make you go in different paces. They'll make you lunge. Lunging is you attack through a lunge in fencing, or like a flesh, which is like you run past. But that's again, you can talk about that. But
Yeah.
you'll do lunges. You will do like recoveries after lunges. So yeah, at least half an hour in a 2-hour fencing training session. Half an hour will be at least half an hour will be just footwork, no
Yeah.
weapons.
Yeah.
And yeah, like in Yale, I mean, 6 months no weapons at all. Like until the coach was like convinced that we knew the basics of footwork, we weren't even allowed to touch the weapons. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that just speaks about how you're tested as an early sportsman as well, right?
yeah,
Because most people who try and learn a new sport come in because they were bedazzled by
yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah,
It can be
yeah,
on television or it can be a sportsman near
yeah,
them or they've
yeah,
seen something. And then they
yeah,
suddenly come on and then you are asked to do the grunt work.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's when, you and the coach have a chance to see how serious you are.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, Oxford, like most people dropped out after like the first 3 weeks, right? Because all they were doing was footwork.
Yeah,
So I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think with any sport, there is a lot of frustration in the beginning because like I came to like do sport fighting. What is all this footwork?
yeah,
All of that, and also in fencing, there is an interesting theory, which is that. And I think again, this is roughly, I think, true for all sport, but it is basically that after 2 years, you hit a plateau in fencing. So you improve for 2 years, or like a year and a half, or depending upon the coach who tells you this theory. But around that time, you just hit a plateau, and then you don't improve for a very long time, and that is
okay.
frustrating because like you feel like, oh, I was improving, I was doing so well, and now I'm just like every match I'm getting hit in the same way. I'm losing to the same people again and again. I am making the same mistakes. I'm being unable to take the next step forward, and that'll last for a year or so. And then you'll take your next steps forward. So if you can sort of like survive that whole year of
Yeah,
frustration, then you become like a solid good fencer after that.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's true because yeah, there is a. I mean, for me, like unfortunately, COVID really interrupted, what was becoming like a really rewarding, fencing journey, and then I took it up again after that. In Berlin, I was fencing, but I had a years gap in the middle, just as it looked like I was sort of becoming good.
yeah,
But I sort of experienced this where like yeah, like you get into Oxford second team in the epee, having a great time, going and fencing all over the UK, fencing with we're going to Nottingham one week and Leicester one week and fencing, and suddenly like you just hit a wall,
yeah,
and you begin losing all your matches, and like you get humiliated by opponents, like you lose 15-3, 15-4, like it's just very frustrating.
yeah,
And whereas when you're starting off, you can justify losing 15-4 by, okay, I'm a beginner,
yeah.
when you've been fencing for 2 years, like it's a little embarrassing to lose 15-4 unless it's a proper pro, so so yeah, all that happens to you, like you just have to deal with it, and just like carry on.
Yeah, and I want to ask a little bit about coming back to this fencing and your life.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you know, you just mentioned everything in fencing happens in a split second.
yeah,
Um, so, let's say one moment of hesitation or misjudgment
yeah,
could be really expensive.
yeah,
Um, and so, given that fencing for you is on the side of what you actually do,
yeah,
um, what has the sport taught you about decision making, or let's say decision making under pressure? And
yeah,
even if you want to extend that thought, what has the sport taught you about relatable skills, transferable
yeah,
skills to
yeah.
your life?
I think that with fencing, the one thing that you learn is that you cannot dwell on your mistakes, right? So because in the
That's all.
pool stage, it is literally a 5 point game, right?
Yeah.
So basically like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's over. It's done in 3 minutes. In the elimination round, 15 point game over 9 minutes. But again, that's still like one fencing match,
Yeah.
maximum 9 minutes. Like, and most of them don't go up to 9 minutes. Like most of them will end around the again the big pros, yes, but at our level, like mostly 7, 8 minutes, it's done. And you cannot dwell on your mistakes because then the next point's coming up immediately.
Yeah.
So you have to reset every single time.
Yeah.
And that's what the coaches always say, that they're like, reset. Of course, like you know every point you have to also think like what went wrong,
Yeah.
or what worked,
Yeah.
right? So you have to think like basically, like what happens is that you know you play a point, and let's say, like like you score a hit. There will be maybe a 5 second or 6 second time frame when after the hit you will be both going back to this on guard line,
Yeah.
and then the next point will start.
Yeah.
So you have about like 5 or 6 seconds to both reset mentally, but also to ask yourself what happened in that point. Like
Correct.
what was the sequence? How can I now take advantage of what I've learned from that point and
Yeah.
now apply that in my next point?
Yeah.
This is of course like great in theory, like in practice, like it doesn't work because
Yeah.
it's very hard,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, in theory, that's what you want to be doing. So I think what you learn is that like you will make mistakes and you can't dwell on them. You have to, like you of course you reflect on them and you learn from them, but you can't dwell on your mistakes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think like that is like the main learning. And I think also, I mean, it's a bit like it's this strange thing where obviously fencing is a competitive sport, but also there's sort of almost a strange kind of collaboration that you have with your opponent, where and the coach in Australia, whom I really like, and he's a great guy. Like he once said, and this will sound very weird, but he said, you're telling a story with your opponent, off the bout. And like it's hard to explain unless you do it, but if you fence, it makes sense, like it's so yeah, I mean, like it's obviously you're trying to beat the other guy, you're trying to win the match, but also there is this sense of it's almost
Conversation.
like it feels like a dance, and at times it feels like like this thing of where you're just moving together. Yeah, like it's competitive, but also collaborative in this way I can't explain. So yeah.
Right. No, and that's something I read as well, that it's almost like a conversation. Fencing is like a
Yeah,
conversation
exactly,
with your
exactly,
opponent.
exactly. Yeah. And of course, I mean, like again, in the Olympics, like you have to win, right? So obviously, like I don't want to downplay the competitive part of it. Like it is sport. You have to win,
Yeah.
but while you're in it, yeah, it just almost feels like you're together in a certain way.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about sport taking you places, right?
Yeah,
You've traveled for fencing, you've mentioned it a
yeah,
few times. So where have you been? Who have you met?
yeah.
And, what did you learn from traveling for the love of the sport?
My most memorable moment is in Budapest, where I got to fence a former Olympic bronze medalist.
Wow.
And, he was so nice because he was training, for the Olympics. And he had no reason to like fence random people who are like way, way below his level. But, he just did, like, and he did not go easy because, so there were two of us, this was a training camp, and there were two of us who were sort of staying back after like the training camp was over, and he was fencing, and he just said, come and fence me. And so obviously we were like, wow, like this guy, and he fenced properly. He did not lower himself, not say, okay, like I'll take it easy on you guys. He was fencing properly, and yeah, I fluked 2 points, which were doubles. So I lost 5-1, 5-1, and both my points were just like kahin se aa gaya, like double point. And the other guy who was with me, like he lost 5-0, 5-0. So obviously, like yeah, but just to fence an Olympic. I can't think of any other sport where that could happen. I can't think of, like, in football, you can't
Yeah.
just randomly end up like playing football with, I don't know, like the equivalent of Mbappe, or like whoever, or like just suddenly have Kohli, like on the crease. But yeah, it happened over here.
Yeah.
So this was wonderful. But yeah, so I think because what I realized was that in India, like it's really hard to do fencing regularly. So whenever I travel, I just drag my big fencing bag with me. At airports, it's a pain, especially New Delhi airport. Like it's a massive pain. So I just like drag my bag with me. And what I've been doing over the last few years is that whichever city I'm traveling to for work, I draw up a list of like fencing clubs and I
Hmm.
cold email them and I said, look, I'm an Indian fencer. I'm passing through your city. I have my fencing gear with me. Would it be okay if I just came and fenced? And I think like one of the great things about fencing is that it is very also like like I said, egalitarian in that way. So people just reply, they say, "Come, yeah, come fence with us. You're welcome to come fence with us." And so in Melbourne, I've gone randomly to like the state squad building and just fence for 4 hours in a ladder match. Like just keep fencing for 4 hours. Just keep changing partners. And Budapest, I used to go every year for 4 years. This I'm not going this year, but I try to go every year in August. The third week they have like a training camp at their very prestigious, like classic fencing club. It's called Vasas FC. And that it's created Olympians and all of that. And so I try and go every year. And then you meet Hungarian fencers.
Yeah.
I met an Indian fencer there, an Indian fencer who was, he was competing, a proper competitive fencer.
Yeah.
A guy called Joshi, Balram Joshi, who's I think like rank 9 or something in the under 21s in India or something of that kind. So
Yeah.
he was actually training for elite competition. I met him out of, and I wouldn't meet him in India, So
Yeah.
we met in Budapest of all places. And, again, like I've taken a train randomly from Oxford and gone to Newcastle in
Yeah.
the depths of winter where it's like minus like 5 degrees. And a lot of fencing in the UK happens in garages, like a
Hmm.
garage is where you fence. It's like a refurbished garage because it's got space. So, like imagine like there's ice falling and, there's ice around you is a garage and you're fencing like on a piece with like ice, and so yeah, I think this gives you these experiences that sport gives you, which is that, you
Absolutely.
end up, yeah, you just end up like living an expansive life through sport.
Yeah.
And fencers are very friendly. There's no arrogance among fencers. Very friendly people. In fact, that they're actually impressed you've carried this bag because fencing bag is very heavy because you have like two weapons. You have like your full whites. You have a mask, fencing shoes, fencing socks, glove. So basically it's a heavy thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, you carried this fencing back from India. Like, okay, fine, come fence with us. So that's the reaction. So
I
yeah,
completely,
so
I completely agree. I think sport, or in a sense, doing something you really love, but something that needs a bit of effort from you,
oh
can
yeah,
get you
yeah,
into rooms you didn't imagine. Even for
yeah.
me, when I went to Tiger Muay Thai, it was my first solo trip. I did not
Thailand,
know.
Thailand. Yeah,
In Thailand, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah,
and I did not know that it is the world's best, one of the world's best martial arts training school. And when I got
yeah,
there, I was there to do fitness classes. But then I
yeah,
decided, oh, this is my chance to test myself at martial arts
yeah,
or get
yeah,
a few basics.
yeah,
And then I just ended up meeting so many different people, and some of the best fighters from the world train there in the
yeah,
rings right next to you,
yeah,
like a casual day. You could
yeah,
walk up to them, talk to them, see them in their everyday training,
yeah,
go see their every Friday fight, which you would pay hundreds of dollars for otherwise.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you would end up meeting from people from all around the world who are trying to get
yeah,
better and who have
yeah,
different stories.
yeah,
Some escaping their realities, some escaping. I mean, I met some people who had escaped wars.
yeah, yeah,
I would have not met these kind of people
yeah,
unless
yeah,
I put myself in a situation that was far beyond my
yeah.
imagination.
Oh, which actually reminds me, like what you just said. So, did you ever listen to Iron Maiden? When you were like younger.
Yeah.
So Iron Maiden's frontman Bruce Dickinson.
Yes.
So Bruce Dickinson was almost an Olympic level fencer,
Wow.
and a foil, and then he switched to épée. And so basically just after COVID, I would fence in London, and in London, Leon Paul is like the place to fence at. it's the yeah it's sort of the most advanced center. And one day I was fencing, and there was like a guy with silver hair, ponytail, fencing there. And I fenced him. I get a good match, like it was 10-7, 10-8, something of that kind. And then I'm sitting taking a break, and like the head coach comes and he's like, do you know who that is? And I was like, no. And he's like, that's Bruce Dickinson. And for a while, I couldn't make the connection, because who would have thought, right? And I was like, wait, Iron Maiden, Bruce Dickinson? He's like, yeah, that's Iron Maiden's Bruce Dickinson. And I
Wow.
was like, oh my god.
Yes.
And yeah, and he would come every Tuesday and Thursday,
Yeah.
fence everyone. Very aggressive fencer, like very aggressive, like really he would attack a lot. And then actually often we would take the train back together. Because so the thing with fencing centers is way out of the cities. So to always travel like about an hour to get to the place. Even in Berlin, I used to travel into East Berlin, deep into East Berlin to go fencing.
Hmm.
So yeah, we take the train back. And so I ended up like fencing against and being on a train with Bruce Dickinson for like a few months. And like, yeah, I mean, how would that ever happen anywhere else in life?
Exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly. How
yeah,
fascinating. And
yeah,
actually, it doesn't surprise me because a couple of episodes ago, I had Jonathan Selvaraj on the podcast,
yeah,
the
yeah,
journalist, and we were discussing this that no matter what you do in life, what is it that is the centerpiece of your life, your, let's say, what you do for a living, uh,
yeah,
there is always value in being much more, experiencing
yeah,
much more, and that's going
yeah,
to spill over into what you do. And he was also giving examples of some sportsmen, like right now you were
yeah,
talking about Bruce, who's a musician, but also enjoyed fencing. When we talk about these stories, they look very discreet. How is this
yeah,
possible? And
yeah,
but for someone like me who's thought about this, alternate skills, alternate experiences spilling over,
yeah,
this is not new. And I always advise people to do things, multiple things passionately.
yeah,
Choose, of course, two or three, but they are going to somewhere find. They are going to give you a unique personality in whatever you
yeah,
do. You could be an engineer, but your
yeah,
uniqueness might
yeah,
come from there. And Jonathan also gave examples of sportsmen who did other things, who were
yeah,
neuroscientists or who were doing other things. He
yeah,
even gave examples of some A sportsmen who actually said that until the age of 13, 14, I wanted to try different sports. I did not want to specialize.
yeah,
At a time when
yeah,
they were being
yeah,
asked to specialize because they were already showing skill in one sport, but then saying that
mhm,
no, I want to experience the
yeah,
world and then I will choose. So
yeah,
truly,
yeah,
I mean, not
yeah,
surprising, but also for our listeners, if you want to experience the world in a way that you've not imagined, find a
yeah,
sport or find an
yeah.
activity, and go meet
Yeah,
people.
if you want to meet Bruce Dickinson, like go fencing. Yeah,
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 but if you want to meet
yeah,
Bruce
yeah.
Dickinson, then fencing it is. And Gautam,
Yeah,
now,
yeah, but no, like I think you're totally right, because I think I just say, like, I think you're completely right, and like like I said, I think it's about living an expansive life, right? And I think that this is one way. Like sport gives you, and I mean, look, yeah, like maybe 5-6 years ago, I was competing in fencing at a university level, but I've never gone beyond that. I mean, I've never even come close to being like like a pro fencer.
yeah,
But even at that level, like lets you live an expansive life, and that's enough. That's
yeah.
what you need.
Exactly, exactly. And now that we've spoken about so many things that you do, Gautam, I have to come back to a question I've asked you before. And I'm as much in awe of
Yeah,
this question and I'm seeking the answer as I was the first time I asked you this, which is that I want to acknowledge your ace time management skills. I know you travel a lot. You must spend a lot of time even
yeah,
packing. I remember asking you this before. How do you manage time? I remember you told me quite clearly at that time that you do think about
yeah,
boxing your time into buckets or rather
yeah,
making buckets.
yeah,
Um, and I was thinking about it a little bit back then. This was 3, 4 years ago. And one of the things that I was thinking is okay, I understand making buckets, but I don't know how to travel from one bucket to the other in the same day, in the same time.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
So tell
Yeah.
me about your, spill some secrets.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's not prescriptive, right? Because different things work for different people. I mean, even a writing process, for example, some people say write 300 words every day, make sure you do a little bit every day. Some people say, it's okay, you can write in bursts. My process in writing is I write in bursts, not every day. So I think, like, I think with time management as well, it's a lot of it is what works for you. So having like boxes, like works for some people, it may not work for everyone. So I wouldn't say everyone has to do it. But I would say that having some kind of structure to the day is essential. And in fact, interestingly, for a long time, fencing was that for me, because when I was fencing in Dynamo Fencing Club in Dwarka, which is a little far from where I am, I'm in South Delhi, and it's about like 45 minutes to go. It was at 4 p.m. and it would really bisect my day, right? So there would be like a pre-fencing day,
Yeah.
and then I'd go and I'd do fencing, and I'd get home by 6 p.m. and then I'd come back by 6:45, 7. There'd be a post-fencing, like day, and so I'd be able to like actually say, okay, like pre-fencing, I will do these things, and then there'll be this very clean divide in the day, and then there'll be like a second part of it. So I think what's helped me a lot is that giving your day some form and sort of having these structuring activities. It need not be fencing, it could be anything else,
Yeah.
whatever like you enjoy doing,
Yeah.
but having that as something that sort of like you build your day around, I think then really helps, because like, okay, I have this thing I love doing at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Before that, let me sort out and do ABC.
Yeah.
Then I'll really enjoy myself doing that, and then I'll come back and I'll I could be reading, I whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that finding these things that can anchor your day will then let you do all the other things in those interstices and around the anchor in a way that I think having formless days does not really work with. So I think like that is what I'd say.
Yeah. So having some form is the bare minimum that one should have, instead of
Yeah, and then of course you can
closed.
explore and see what works for you, what works best for you. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And then I have a bit of a question on focus, right? We are living
yeah,
in a world where everything is designed almost to take away our
yeah,
focus. Okay, that's perhaps some people's
yeah,
success metrics, in the
yeah,
giant tech, big tech. Um,
yeah,
every form of
yeah,
content we're consuming today is, perhaps besides reading, is designed for micro consumption, and it is
yeah,
designed for you not to dwell too much on it. Okay. um,
yeah,
in
yeah,
such a
yeah,
time in such a time, and you are an active
yeah,
participant on social media as well, contributing to the discourse
yeah.
actively. How do you stay focused? How do you prioritize what gets your attention?
Like this is a good question, and I'm actually quite bad with this because, like, I've developed a very bad scrolling habit of late. And I think like with all the things going on, in the world, genocide and like war, all of that,
Yeah.
you get sort of obsessed with
Yeah.
your phone and just to know what's happening.
Yeah.
But I think, and I'm trying to get better at this. I think like the only solution is to lock your phone up for a part of the day and not go near it.
Yeah.
And you could do it in different ways. You could have like you could physically lock it up, and not go near it. You could have like that app that will lock your phone once your screen time exceeds something and you cannot unlock it. Like I think there are various ways you can impose that discipline on yourself. But I think the only way is that you have to in the day get off the phone for like a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
Like you said, the apps are designed to addict. They make us addicted, and they're designed to the dopamine hit, all of that. They're designed to keep us glued to them, and you have to like I think physically separate yourself from your phone to like be able to focus. Like I said, I'm actually having difficult time with this right now, but I'm trying to get better by using these techniques of putting the phone away, all of that.
Yeah. And sport is one that allows me to bring back focus to myself, because it simply says that you
Yeah,
cannot do this
yeah.
while being on your phone.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You can't be fencing and being on your phone. It's not physically possible, So yeah, I mean, it is great. Like sport will ensure that at least for that time, your mind is not elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah. And so, Gautam, we're coming to the end. I have a couple other questions for you, something that I ask almost all my
Yeah,
guests. Um, you
yeah,
know, what is that one strongly held belief that you have
Yeah.
changed over time?
Ooh, okay. That's interesting. What is. I mean, I think that. I think it's a little bit. I think it'll be a slightly meta answer, but I think like actually I think what I've learned is to doubt my own like certainties a lot more. So I think
Hmm.
like 10 years ago, once I made up my mind, it would stay made, and I was very quick to make up my mind,
Hmm.
and then there would be no room for doubt. I think that the thing what has changed is that now like I'm much more circumspect in coming to conclusions, and my conclusions are often revisable. Now, that doesn't mean everything is revisable. Of course, there are certain core principles that are not. But I think in general, I'm much less of a believer in like, um, absolutes than I was maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. It's so interesting that so many of my guests have said the same things in one way or the other. I suppose that's the one thing that comes with age, that you learn to believe that there are considerations beyond yourself that could perhaps change how you look at something, and you become a lot more receptive
Yeah.
to entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you learn is that, yeah, I think what you learn is that there is a core which you have to hold on to, which shouldn't change. But like beyond that, beyond the core, you should be open to be surprised. Yeah.
Yeah. And and then I also wanted to ask you, in today's times, you briefly mentioned there's so much going on in the world. A lot of it
Yeah.
is just trampling human rights, and just a lot of what the hell is going on moments where you cannot
Yeah.
rationalize what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
So it's not just the
Yeah.
blood and gore, it's the fact that we've gone beyond rationalizing what's happening. It's very difficult to even
Yeah.
look at something from another's point of view at this point. And so, looking at
Yeah.
the state of the world, what gives you hope today?
I think that it's always, knowing that people have faced immensely difficult, circumstances, not of their own making throughout history, and that they have acted in ways that are, admirable and noble and good, and that's always been the case. So you'll always have, yeah, like I said, a lot of genocide going on, in this world. It's happened multiple times, happening right now. You'll have aggression, you'll have all of that, and you'll still see that there will be that kernel of, humanity that people will exhibit, and they will always resist in the ways that they can, and that is something that nobody has been able to snuff out, I think, at any point. So I think that when you look at that, you feel like, that will always remain, no matter what. And I think our job is, I think, relatively privileged people who are thankfully, so far at least, safe from many of these horrors, is to try and, yeah, like assist those people in the ways that we potentially can do, from our positions.
Yeah, fully agree, fully concur. And my last question to you, you're an
Yeah.
avid reader. So, for me and my
Yeah.
listeners, if you could recommend a couple of books, could be any. Of
Yeah.
course, I'm going to
Yeah.
list all your books that
Yeah.
I have. Some one or two I
Yeah.
have read, but there are many. I'm going to definitely list them. But something that has recently or in general in life impacted you in one way or the other, if you could recommend a couple of books.
Yeah, I'll recommend one science fiction novel and one like not science fiction novel. So science fiction. So I'm just in fact doing this book sort of like 6 month, like book collection, gift box with Champaka Bookshop. We're doing, science fiction as a theme, and one of the sub themes is climate fiction. So in that there is a wonderful book called The Mountain in the Sea, by Ray Naylor, which is about first contact between human beings and a race of sentient and intelligent octopi. So the octopus. and it is a wonderful novel of just other minds engaging with non-human intelligence, climate catastrophe, a lot of stuff going on there, and it's written beautifully. So that's my science fiction recommendation. And non-science fiction, again, like given the times that we are in, one of my favorite books is this book called Gate of the Sun by this Lebanese writer called Elias Khoury, who passed away last year. It's a novel. It's about the Palestinian revolution. So I think and I think like if anyone wants to really understand, I think Palestine and its history through fiction in a really moving way, that's the book you want to go to. It's called Gate of the Sun.
Cool. I'm not surprised that an octopus, came into the conversation eventually. For those who don't know, it's his favorite animal. I don't know if it's been
Yeah.
superseded by another, but
No, it's the octopus. Yeah, the octopus. Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gautam, for being
Yeah.
on my podcast, for sharing your fascinating duel with fencing, but also for the work you do, for bringing your fearless,
Thank you so much.
rational, learned, and well-considered voice to the discourse in the country. It's been a privilege and an honor to have you on my show and to call you a friend. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners. I'm going to see you again on another episode of the Curious Human Project. Thank you for joining us both today. Thanks.